Welcome to Grace Pilled, where we explore the infinitude of God by talking about God, within God, with God, aka interviews with people spanning the vastness of the spiritual path. My name is Hanna, and I will be your guide. I've been studying and practicing in a classical Shakta tantric tradition since 2015, and I just love exploring all of the ways that God wakes up within her own dream through the guise of individual people on this planet. For the last few years, I've been working professionally as a guide for others, doing one-on-one work, and also giving talks and courses. If you ever want to chat with me, you can book a call with me on my website, or you can join my Patreon, which is my massive library of talks that I've given over the years, and we do bi-monthly Q&A sessions. Oh, and by the way, guys, our 4-week course on interpersonal conflict, Run Towards the Hard Shit, starts in just over 2 weeks. I'm going to be co-teaching it with Monica, who you will meet again next week when we release another Yapcast. And that last episode that we did on the inner child was actually very popular. The statistics are there, so I'm taking that as a good sign. So if you're ready to see conflict as the path to the life that you truly want, and yes, I am telling you that getting really good at conflict is how you get the life that you want, we look forward to meeting you during class, okay? And all of that information is on my website, hannawilliams.com/conflict. But enough about us. Let's talk about Nataraj, okay? So today I'm joined by Nataraj Chaitanya, a seasoned yogi, philosopher, and teacher with over 2 decades of experience in classical Tantra, mantra, Bhakti, and yoga philosophy. Beginning his meditation and yoga practice at the age of 13, Nataraj has dedicated his life to sharing his embodiment of the transformative teachings of Tantra, leading retreats, workshops, and teacher training programs worldwide. Now, as you will hear, Nataraj is my spiritual brother. I feel this way about him deeply. We share a lineage. Both of our gurus, who we are actively disciples of, were disciples of Swami Muktananda. So we both have been influenced quite strongly by the flavor of his unique transmission. And in future episodes, we want to speak more about the guru-disciple relationship and how interesting and transformative it can be to hold a teacher in both their holiness and their imperfect humanity. But for now, we can all just be blessed by the nectar of Nataraj's presence. Sometimes when I speak with him, my mind goes completely blank, but in a blissful way. I have only ever had this experience with my own guru, okay? So that's like quite the testimonial. So, all this to say, the grace he radiates is quite palpable and also poppin, okay? So let's get into the conversation. Hi, Nataraj.
Hello, hello.
Welcome.
Nice to be with you.
Nice to be with you. My spiritual brother. Did you know that I think of you in that way?
Did you know I think of you in that way? Yeah, we're guru bias, you know?
I completely think of you as like my spiritual brother. I think that's why I'm always so excited to talk with you. There's something about
Uh,
that sangha. We're in different sanghas, but we share the lineage, and there's some camaraderie that's almost indescribable that I think comes from
yeah.
that.
It's like when you're going through a really weird, awkward moment at a party, and you know that you can look across the room and make eyes with someone who understands, and just that silent glance of deep knowing, like, this is a really weird party, you know? Like that that can turn the whole moment around. And so I definitely feel that in our association. Like the fact that we could like make eyes at each other and be like, it's like great.
Oh my God, that's making me laugh so much. That's such a good analogy. That's such a good analogy. And then like the party is just like this realm.
Yeah. And
The party is the
it's a
realm.
really weird party.
Big
It's such
time.
a weird party.
Oh my God, unbelievable. Ooh, I don't know what's happening in Australia, but it's getting weird over here.
Yeah. When people ask me about the States, that's actually what I've been saying to them is we're in a very weird part of the movie. We're in a very weird part of the movie.
I
I
like
don't
that.
know
That's a
how else
very
to put it.
dispassionate way to say it. Yeah, it's like it's just
Yeah.
the weird part of the movie. Oh, yeah. So, wait, before I ask you a question, I was just thinking about our lore together, and I don't actually remember how we met. I think I just saw you through Tantra on Instagram and started following you, but I don't really remember how we started talking to each other. Do you have any memory of that?
I think at one point you were posting on your account like, and there was some pretty like something where I was like reading between the lines, and I was like, oh, she's like a Shakta.
Mm.
And then all doubt got removed when you posted like a meme of Baba Muktananda,
Oh,
like the butterfly meme
that's my
we
favorite
do
meme.
with him. And I was just like, and then I think I sent you like an old photo of Baba Muktananda like driving like a tractor, like a lawnmower tractor. And I was like, and a bunch of like him wearing like big funny glasses and things. And I was like, and then we put all the pieces together.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right. I've had that experience with a couple of tantric yogis on Instagram where they've somehow been able to read between the lines, and then they reach out to me and they're like, "Are you tantric?" Because I'm not super overt about that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like people who are steeped in the philosophy and the traditions, we can almost smell each other out. Have you ever had that experience?
Oh my God. Yeah. I, once you're in the web of the Shakti, you've been introduced to the living experience of what Shakti is. All kinds of weird things happen. I remember one time I went I was visiting a friend who was doing grad school in Paris, and I'd always really wanted to go to visit a cathedral several hours outside of Paris, where a labyrinth has mysteriously been painted on the floor of this church in, I think, a place called Chartres. And anyway, so I take the train outside of Paris to go to this church where this like strange pagan labyrinth happened to be painted on the floor.
Hmm.
And they move all the chairs away to let you do this walking meditation of the labyrinth. And so after this long train ride, I'm bursting to go to the toilet, and I there's no toilet inside of the church, so you have to go in the little village. And so I'm in the public bathroom in this village, and I'm washing my hands, and a guy comes out of the stall, and he starts to wash his hands, and I have a tattoo of Shiva on my forearm, and he looks at me and he goes, "That's my God." And I've had this experience happen a lot, and I said, "That's also my God." And I noticed that he's wearing a Rudraksha mala
Ah,
that's has it's been chained together, and you don't often see Rudraksha on wire in caps like this, except in the Siddha yoga traditions. And I was like, "Who is your guru?" And he said, "Baba Muktananda."
no shit.
And I literally was like, "This is my guru. This is my tradition, Baba Muktananda." And he and I both, with wet hands from washing our hands, start to sob and just embrace each other in this tiny bathroom in Chartres. Um, I'm just sobbing at like how glorious and mysterious and large and touching life is. But like the whole bathroom filled with light. You know what I mean? It's so strange. And a curious thing also about that particular cathedral where this labyrinth is there's a kind of blue pigment in the stained glass of this church that they haven't ever been able to replicate. And it's so like blue pearl coated.
Yes.
So like after having that experience, then going in to see these like grand, beautiful blue stained glass uh windows and walking the labyrinth. And as I walked the labyrinth afterward, I was having this, there's only one way in and one way out of the labyrinth. And so I was having this experience of just being like, wow, of just how certain things were that like grace would be there
Wait, did you meet him after you went through the labyrinth or before?
before.
Oh wow. Oh, so you were like
And then
thinking about what you just experienced going through the
yeah,
labyrinth. Oh my
I was in
God.
such an exalted state after that. Like yeah, just bubbling over.
Wow, I love that story so much. I love that story so much. Yeah, it's one of those stories of that like living quality of Shakti or of life where it's like life is just playing games with us, but also affirming what we know to be true in the most like interesting ways.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. Oh my God. How did we get here? Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay, wait. So let me ask you just an intro question.
Sure.
What's um what's something small or big that you're like really pleased with or proud of right now? Like a recent win, something that you feel really good about.
I am I'm working with a group of students right now. I'm teaching in a course about the goddess. And for the first time in my life, I'm really um sharing quite openly about practices and perspectives that are maybe the nearest to me, like thoughts and perspectives about the guru disciple relationship. And also, like, practically in the practice, like, I'm teaching people how to perform puja in the way that I perform puja. And sort of my view on doing these kind of anushtans or like deep dives into repetition of mantra, um, and how this kind of relates and relating it to the goddess, this kind of incredible relationship between the guru, the goddess, and us, and I've just been challenging myself to like really reveal my heart in a way I haven't before. I've been teaching yoga, meditation, philosophy, and tantra for like 20 years now. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, I've never taught this material before, this particular material before, and I want it to, I want my self-revelation in the process. And so, yeah, I feel like that's been super rewarding and like really scary because you're sharing things that are so precious and have been so impactful, that like part of you want people to appreciate what you have to say. You want people to understand you. You don't want people to find fault with all those things. And so there's like a personal part of me that's being really challenged in that. But the group of students is so receptive and so lovely and so curious that I think it's been a real gift. And so that feels like a huge win.
Mm. Do part of the practice, okay, so it feels precious to you because it's so close to your actual practice and the depth of how you're practicing now, but do you feel like maybe some other stuff that you've taught maybe isn't as based in the heart? Like maybe it's more based in the mind? I'm just trying to understand like that
Oh,
shift.
totally. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, a lot of a lot of the work that I've done as a teacher has been being involved in yoga teacher trainings, and through
Mm.
some weird coincidence, a lot of yoga programs, they have a huge emphasis on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra
Mm-hmm.
and teaching of the Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's great wisdom that you can apply to your life and your sadhana, your practice, in both texts, but those are not necessarily the closest texts to my heart or the ones that have created the largest
Right.
impact on me. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I think Western yoga's obsession with Patanjali is actually curious to say the least, and maybe
Right,
the
because the stuff that's
to say
close,
the
the
most.
closest, the stuff that's closest to you actually might be even more interesting to the average Western person. What do you
And
think?
actually probably more applicable,
More applicable,
you know.
totally. I agree.
Yeah. So like a lot of the texts that are really powerful and have been really powerful are these tantric texts, things like Shiva Sutra or Spandakarika, Pratibhigya Hridayam, and Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. I think a lot of people inherit such bad ideas about meditation from poor explanations about Patanjali's
Hmm.
system and his approach to meditation, whereas the path
Hmm.
the path of practice that's laid out in a text like Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, it offers 112 dharanas, or these kind of thought experiments or centering techniques that might lead to meditation. And if you think you can't meditate, there's something in there that's going to work for you actually.
Oh,
And
totally. You got
it's
options.
yeah, that's right. And it's so um it's so trial based, it's so experimental, it's so compassionate, and it also implies an infinite number of dharanas.
Hmm.
There's unlimited doorways to access the self, and it can be accessed in your eyes open experience or your eyes closed experience.
Hmm.
And that's the idea of like trying to meet God in the world and meet God in the inner space of one's heart. I think both are really required for success on the path. So, but a lot of my career has been just sharing the wisdom of Patanjali and the Bhagavad Gita.
Right, because that was just the environment that you've spent a lot of time in,
Yeah,
like in those teaching settings.
that's right. And so, in some ways, in public, I've always appeared like a Vaidika, like a
Yes.
yogi. And in my tradition, in the ashram, in our kind of kula conversation, it's very clear we're all Shaivites. And then in my most intimate moments, I really hold myself to be a Shakta.
Wait, there's like a saying.
That's exactly the saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the saying.
So
Wait, so for anyone who's listening, there's a saying. It's like outwardly Vaidika, inwardly Shaivite, or Tantric is one of the ways that I've heard it. But then, like,
in-
deep in the heart, you're a Shakta.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like out in the world, just appear like you worship Narayana, Vishnu, whatever the culture is doing. It's like act normal. Don't be a weird, like. And then at home, be a tantrika, be a Shaivite, honor everything as the play of consciousness. And then in your most intimate moments,
Mm.
there be a Shakta,
Mm.
And so I feel like that's so true for me.
Oh, so
And
you're letting your students into the cave of your heart with you.
that's right. Yeah.
It's good. It's kind of warm and small in there. You got to fit a lot of people. It's kind of vulnerable.
It's yeah. Yeah. It's truly like going to India. It's like tiny temple, 100 people inside. It's like we're
Have you
just
ever been
doing
into like a steam cave or something where it's like a very small space and there's a bunch of people just sitting in there and you're kind of like,
yeah.
wow, we're really close together
Yeah.
in this steamy cave. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so your win is inviting people into the mouth of the cave of your
That's
Shakta
right.
cave
That's right.
and
Yeah.
kind of just going through the process of noticing what's coming up for you there and feeling welcome. Everybody's like, yeah, we're happy that we're in the cave with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it feels like a real gift from the Shakti, from the energy of life, and it feels like a real challenge and test from her also.
Totally.
So,
Totally. Oh, totally. Well, for anyone who's listening so far, it probably seems very clear that we have a similar background. But how would you describe yourself spiritually for the people that are listening?
ooh. Um, I would probably describe myself as a a modern mystic, a modern contemplative, a modern monastic.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, and so I am a city person through and through. I am a relisher of life. I I happen to love the world. I did not always love the world, but my practice has inspired me to love the world.
Mm,
And
mm,
I also have this one foot in the modern world and another foot in like a time-tested lineage and system of uh esoteric transformation. And so
mm,
I am
mm,
Kabir says like I'm a slave to that intensity. So I'm yeah, I'm deeply devoted to that process of this kind of ancient indigenous
mm,
wisdom that comes from India, this tantric system, and trying to live it in an honest way that honors the tradition in a modern circumstance.
mm. Wow, I love everything. That was so eloquent. And that really painted a beautiful picture. And also
Thank you.
The Joker in my head wants to say he's the Siddha in the city.
Oh my God. That could be a great blog, a great podcast.
Siddha in the city.
That's right. Uh,
Oh my God. Wow, that's so beautiful. I love what you're saying about this time-tested process. And it almost that and I really relate with what you're saying because when I hear you say it like that, I almost feel like that time-tested quality of the lineage and the practices and the process, it's like this pull that is like the ground of our exploration as we're modern people and as you live in the city and as you do all of these things. But it's like you it's almost like that's the stability, and then the love that you have for the world is like all of this change and all of the stuff that you're interacting with and your individual dharma and like the nataraj of it all. Does that make sense when I put it like that?
yeah, yeah, totally. It's like yoga postures, they first need stability, so they have stay power. And the second aspect of the yoga posture is it needs mobility. It needs aliveness. It needs adaptability. It needs dynamism.
Hmm.
And so it's like the roots of the tree support its height, but the top part of the tree is incredibly, pliable and flexible. So I feel like this there's the two wings of the bird, or the stability and the mobility um
Yes.
inside. And these traditions,
Yes.
the idea that the traditions themselves are perfectly preserved and have been unchanging for thousands of years, uh I, I would have to say is total bullshit. And there's actually the enduring power of Sanatana Dharma, the wisdom traditions from India, is actually in their ability to integrate, to adapt, to adjust, to accommodate, to reconsider,
Mm,
you know?
mm.
And so I think that a spirit of hermeneutics, like taking ancient
Yes.
teachings and updating them, is actually always at the forefront of this tradition. There's room for improvisation, innovation, inspiration,
Mm,
revelation in these traditions, but also you stay rooted in this
mm,
in the tradition.
mm,
So I think that the
mm.
sexual tension
It's
between those two things
evolving. Yeah,
is,
the
yeah,
sexualization. Yeah, there's an evolution. How could there not be?
yeah.
Because I feel like so much of these traditions, if there's any grace involved, like that's all about evolution and how things adapt to the change
Yeah.
that we're experiencing.
And Grace, she wants to meet you where you're at.
Mm.
Like that's part of the mercy of
Mm-hmm.
the goddess, of
Mm-hmm.
the divine, that like she's gonna meet you where you're at. We
Mm-hmm.
just have to become open to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Um, so literally a couple of minutes ago, I heard a horribly loud bang somewhere in my house, and I want to go see what that was, and I'm just gonna edit
Yeah.
this out. Does that sound good?
Sure.
I'm
Yeah,
just gonna go
absolutely.
do that really quick. So anyway, we're good. I just like I know I started to notice myself, I'm like thinking a lot about that bang, and I was like, I just need to go look at what happened. But now I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, yeah, you have to listen to the promptings of one's inner world. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? It's
That's
like if
right.
it's come to your attention, it requires your attention, actually.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real. Well, okay, so I love what you said about how you would describe yourself spiritually. Can I ask you like one yogi to another, like what do you think about that question? It's kind of a funny question. Like, is it easy to answer, or do you feel like it comes naturally? Or is there
About
some
who I
resistance?
who I am as a spiritual person.
Yeah, like how you would describe yourself.
Um, yeah, I mean, like the longer I practice, the less I mean, there are certain parts of myself that I like love and cherish and celebrate. I mean,
Hmm.
most of them actually.
Hmm.
But even the messy bits. Um, but I feel like I grew up as a dancer and a choreographer, and I always felt like art was something that I left in my wake. It was a relic of a moment. And so I have this like history of who I've been, but what I am, it's always being formed moment to moment
Mm.
it's actually it's filled with possibility as long as I don't define myself too much from the past.
Mm.
So yeah, I feel like more and more as I deepen my connection with presence, I don't have to defend my identity so
Mm.
much or hope that other people understand who or what I am. And that what I actually gain in not being that concerned about it is that I can meet people where they're at, that I can, in the same way that my teachers and I feel like the divine is always like adapting, adjusting, accommodating,
Totally.
reaching out to me, I can do that
Mhm.
for other people.
Mhm.
Um, and that actually matters more to me.
Mhm.
That I'm not so wrapped up in defending a personal brand or identity
Oh,
or
totally.
history or opinion, and I can just sort of like just be me in a natural, relaxed way.
Mhm.
But those flavors of a kind of mysticism, contemplation, kind of monasticism, are sort of pillars inside. Yeah.
Totally. 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 Yeah, you said modern mystic, monastic, and contemplative.
Yeah.
I like that trinity.
Yeah, well, they have such different flavors, you know.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a thing that I've put at the center of my life that isn't that common.
Mhm.
And to
Yes.
live a life that's centered around them means a life of discipline,
Mhm.
a way of understanding my suffering,
Mhm.
a way that I use my life to understand the teachings and the tradition. And yeah, what I'm ultimately after is an experience that has to be grasped and understood not just by the senses, but also by the soul, you know, the self.
Mhm.
And that does not make for a very regular life.
No, oh my God, literally not at all. You're like 10 times more hardcore than me, but like I am such a freak in the sense that like I have sacrificed almost every Saturday night for the last 10 years to go to an ashram. Most people wouldn't do that. And I started doing that when I was like 22. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like I've made some choices in my life that like are kind of unusual.
No, yeah, and those choices are not always understood by people you share a life with. Yeah. So I get it. You sort of but when that alarm clock goes off inside of you, you know, or you start to develop like a spiritual
Ah.
hunger or thirst, like once that is inside of you, it's unquenchable. It can't be satiated until and you become a seeker.
No,
And
it's so
then
real.
when you get the right mix of practices and teachers and
Yeah.
teachings, you become sort of a finder.
Yes.
You're like, okay, well, I want to make the most of this awakening. I want to make the most.
Yes.
I want to realize the fruit of what this practice could offer me.
Oh, wow. Oh, I like
So
that
yeah,
distinction. I've never heard that before. Seeker to finder.
yeah. I think
I
at
like
this
that.
point, you know, we're both finders. You know,
Mm.
it's like
Hmm.
you're inside of a tradition. You have the grace of a great teacher. You've
Hmm.
got you've got practices that obviously have worked for you,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you just want to expand your contact with that.
Hmm.
So you just got to keep going.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, sometimes I think about like mm, my perseverance with my tradition, and as the years go by, it just becomes profoundly clear that like nothing else hits quite the same as the bliss of the spiritual path. Like
Yeah.
literally nothing else hits the same. But the thing that people might not understand is that when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, doing spiritual things is the thing that's worth doing. It's like building your life around that central cause is the thing that will always hit right. But if you
Yeah.
start to believe that like your job or your relationship or your passion project is the thing that's going to hit, that's kind of getting a little off kilter. And I've been going to my ashram for so long that I notice in myself it's like, I could travel around the world and have a wonderful time, but there's nothing like being in the meditation hall. in the
Yeah.
presence of yogis. There's nothing like it, but it's a lived experience. I don't know if anything I'm saying makes any sense to you, but
Oh, totally. I came to the realization like at some point I was like, oh, the greatest love of your life is the divine,
mm-hmm.
and like nothing is ever really going to compare to that. And
Yes.
so long as I try and squeeze that intense, like I can be such an intense person in feeling and thought and action.
Hmm.
If I try and squeeze that level of love or kind of rasa or juice out of ordinary relationships, it smothers them, it blows
Oh
them
my God,
up,
it's so real.
you know, like it has all kinds of huge karmic ramifications. It creates a lot of tension. But if I pour my desire into, like, if you pour your desire into just, regular bitches, like what you end up with is disappointment or anxiety that you're going to be rejected or frustrated desire. But even if you don't get what you want, if you pour all of that
Hmm.
desire into the divine,
Hmm.
um
You never lose.
you you get devotion.
And that's true.
and
And you get devotion.
and actually, like, God can take your frustration, it can take your anxiety, she
Hmm.
can take your sorrow, and the more you reveal all the shades of your experience
Hmm.
to her, that relationship actually only ever deepens.
Yes.
I'm
Very.
like, the return on investment on that for me is way too good to try and put something else to worship a golden calf, basically. Like, it's like,
Hmm.
so when I'm trying to squeeze the love that I know I get from the divine out of ordinary circumstances or mundane relationships, or accomplishing outer world tasks, I know I'm off balance spiritually, and I
Yes.
actually need to reorient all that stuff back to the divine.
Hmm. Oh, it's
And
like an anchor or a compass that keeps you back on track.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but I also think that part of the reason why we're able to do that, I would guess, is because we know what it feels like to feel that connection, to feel that love, to feel that satisfaction and fulfillment of knowing you're in the exact right place, whether it's in the meditation hall or not.
yeah.
That intense fulfillment. And then because you know that fulfillment, the discomfort that comes when you're out of alignment with it is almost amplified.
Oh
Whereas,
God,
like,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Whereas
Yeah.
most people are always in that discomfort, but they don't have like the contrast. Am I making sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think a part of it too is like an ability to use your pain as an alarm clock to wake you back up to the wisdom of practice and tradition.
Yes.
That, like, it's in Narada Bhakti Sutras, it's one of the ways that bhakti is actually defined, that like there's actually incredible anguish at being separated from this devotion, and but you use that to reorient yourself back to love,
Mm-hmm.
back to contact. And so there's a quality they call mumukshutva, one's longing for liberation. And if you use all of your if you drag all of your life onto the path, everything will fuel this longing for liberation, which is the real thing that I think brings success in yoga. You have to want to be free, and have to want to grow more than you want to be right, more than you want to be
Yes.
comfortable, more than you want to um anything. And so um I think using life circumstances to help us awaken and surrender, like, that's the name of the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Wait. Now I'm on. Now I have a brain worm where you were talking about devotion, and we've been talking about devotion, and devotion's a topic that I teach about a lot with students one on one, and in my humble research as a guide over the last few years, I've noticed that Westerners don't really understand bhakti. And it
Yeah.
might just be, I don't know, it's just like the Western construct of mind, Christianity. There is some bhakti in Christianity in certain maybe Pentecostal churches, but
Yeah.
it's like it's not very common because I think Westerners associate devotion with action. It's like I'm very devoted to my job, whereas maybe we would say like no, devokti, devokti, bhakti, bhakti is the position of your heart in what you're doing, and so I'm kind of curious, like how do you describe devotion to a student who maybe isn't familiar in it in the way that we relate with it?
Right. So, oh, awareness in this tradition we would call Shiva. Aliveness we would call Shakti. Um, they can't be separated. They use examples like fire and its heat, water and its wetness, the sun and its rays, milk and its whiteness. Um, Awareness loves aliveness. Um, they're in a loving relationship. Your awareness holds all of your good days, all of your bad days, all of your triumphs, all of your failures. When um when we resist the moment, we create tension. From this from the tantric perspective, whatever we're holding in our awareness, we're adoring, we're loving, we're worshiping. So for me, a life of devotion is about orienting awareness towards the thing that is actually going to expand the energy of that love. Um, what's going to make me feel more uh inseparable from the flow of life, or more in continuity with the flow of life? What are the thoughts, feelings, actions um that help me to appreciate things the way they are now? That kind of appreciation, conscious appreciation of something, it's the birth of bhakti. Um, and so I often in my own practice I use beauty. I orient towards beauty as a way to create devotion, and I try and search for beauty in shit circumstances. Um, I try and I try and remember beauty. Um, Initially that started out, I created a lovely puja, like an altar space, and I offered my love into that with the way I arranged it. I offered flowers, I said mantras, I sung stotrams or hymns of praise. Um I was able to create a little sort of cave for myself in my life where I knew that if I stepped into this space and I lit the candle and I waved the incense and I rang the bell and I sang my little songs and I meditated, I could usually make contact with the feeling of love and appreciation and presence. Um, and over time, as even if the outer world was shit, like I could always do that there.
Absolutely.
And or if I couldn't do that, I could, I could cry and ask for help. I could really
That's real.
pray and beg. Um, and over time, I started to be able to do that more and more in my outer life, where I feel like I'm trying to source my life from beauty, even when things aren't pretty every day. Even when the world gives you all sorts of reasons to believe it's actually a really ugly place. You can feel, if I have actually just bring my awareness consciously into this moment and try and use the spirit of appreciation to approach this, you will find beauty, you will find nourishment for growth. You'll find something that is working, or you'll have the inspiration to
Yes.
contribute in a solutions focused way. Our
Yes.
love, it's always a movement towards oneness. So my practice, it's one of devotional non-duality. So there's only one thing and we're
Yes.
all it, and our love is always a movement towards oneness. So if you're in the loving state, you just have to keep it. You have to sustain it in a sort of gentle, abiding way. And if you lose touch with the love that you love with, perform actions, think thoughts, feel feelings that reorient you back towards the love, which has the power to elevate you into the unitive experience.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Narada, he says in Narada Bhakti Sutras, one of the ways that we could cultivate bhakti is avyavrita bhajanat, which means unceasing worship. And if you just read the text without a teacher, you'd be like, oh my God, he's asking us to do puja all day, every day,
Yes.
like unceasing. But if you know something about yoga
Yes.
philosophy, it's like the thing that's unchanging is actually what's real. So, unceasing worship is actually our real nature. Um, love, the love that that's expressed in a desire to serve and a desire to sing and praise is actually who we are. That's like our real constitution. Um, and so how to like just keep using my life, my body, mind, and energy to just settle into that. Well, you have
Wow.
to find out what works for you.
Yeah, no, yeah, you had to find what works for you, totally. Yeah, that's so funny because sometimes I've told the story about the greatest yogi. It's like an old Shiva kind of folk tale, and there's the yogi that goes around the mountain, and he's doing it because Lord Shiva's gonna tell him that he's the greatest yogi or something, and then he like fails the test because the whole time he was going around the mountain he was just thinking about himself and like how he's doing such a good job. And then Shiva's like, oh, well, I'm sorry, but the greatest yogi is this guy Shubham who lives down the street and he has a farm, he has a bunch of kids, and he's always thinking about me. And that's why he's the greatest yogi. And then sometimes when I tell that story or people will listen to the talk where I share that story, people will be like, well, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to just think about Shiva all the time? Like, am I supposed to say Shiva, 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 Shiva in my head constantly? And I'm like, almost, because mantra can be really helpful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Look,
Almost. Almost.
honestly, yeah.
Because I would bet that Shubham was reciting the name of God, so to speak. Like he was probably saying Om Namah Shivaya all day on some level. But I think that the thing that creates this unceasing devotion that you're talking about as well could have the presence of God within everything is so baked into your worldview that you cannot help but remember her in everything that you're experiencing. And
Yeah,
that's a process of shifting your worldview. Like, not everybody's born into that mentality.
well, I think that's the beauty of this tradition too, is that because it's devotional non-duality, it the divine has a personality,
Mm.
and so every experience in my life teaches me about um God's temperament, her humor, her
Mm.
um compassion, her love, her quirks,
Mm.
so that's
Mm.
uh and it's so relational. And
Absolutely.
for me, like my suffering has always occurred in monologue. Me as just the voice in my head is the picture of what suffering looks like. But when I'm brought into community, when I'm brought into relationship, when I'm brought into dialogue, that's where real healing has occurred. Um, because that loving association has allowed for internal shifts to occur. And so the relational aspect of this path is, yeah, I want to love all of life. I want to love people how they are. And I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody who's going through a tough time, but you wishing how they if you continue to wish that they would somehow be different than they are, it only creates obstacles to their growth and their shift and their process. But if you start to really accept them as they are and love them as they are, your acceptance and love and nurturing of them in that way inspires growth in them.
Yes.
One of my teachers, Davy Mashi, says, yeah, like real love is acceptance of the way things are here now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's the real worship of life. That's the real Avyavrita Bhajanat, I think. That's the real unceasing devotion. Out of all the possibilities in consciousness, I could direct my mind any which way. I could be doing anything else. I'm choosing to be here with this now,
Yeah.
and in an intimate way.
Yes.
Like I'm gonna be open to all the horrors, all the humor, all the
Yes.
all the beauty, all the
Yes.
pain, all of it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but there's a lot of Shakti in that, actually. There's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. Yeah. One way that I put it is like bhakti or devotion challenges us to stay in love even when nothing is going our way.
Woo, yes. So true.
It's so real. And but when you're there, it's such a state, but I do think it's such a lived experience, and it requires a bit of like reframing in your mind of like what it means to stay in love and what the world is, and like, do you mean I'm supposed to love genocide and war and all these things? And it's like, it just takes some recalibration to understand the deeper meanings in my
Totally. And
experience.
it's just a real radical honesty with myself. What if I'm like, if my shit's come up, if I'm triggered, if I've lost the perspective of this tradition,
Mm,
then I have to pull back.
mm,
For me,
mm,
I I use a couple. I'll share these, I guess. I use a couple of perspectives. Like the highest perspective I try and keep is Nashivam Vidyate Quachit. This is a quote that comes from Kularnava Tantra, and it says, "Nothing exists that's not Shiva." So the highest octave view I could have of life is all this is God, all this is Shiva, this is all loving awareness, divine consciousness. It's all me, you know, everything's consciousness. And if I don't have that attitude, my second port of call is to remember sadhana and my mumukshutva, my longing for liberation and my wish to grow, and then take all of this as fuel for growth. I deeply wish to grow, and I'm going to be humble and open and receive the feedback I'm getting from my life about where I'm stuck, and then try and grow. And that allows for a kind of solutions focused mindset. If my shit's really coming up a mile a minute and I can't do that, the third thing I try and remember
mm,
is I try and remember death.
mm,
Remember that someday this body will be a dead body. Someday every mountain will turn to dust.
mm.
In 20 years, this problem won't fucking matter. Like all that stuff. Um, and so I try and hold those three
It's really
views, and
powerful.
knowing when to use which view for whatever's going on in my life. It's like I can remember God, I can remember practice, or I could remember death.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
and usually one of those things will get a kind of shift.
mm,
But the return to love is so essential.
mm. Yeah, and then when if you return to sadhana, that could inevitably lead you to love. If you turn to death, that could inevitably lead to love. You turn to God, that turns to love. It's like
Yeah.
those three paths kind of reorient you back to that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get more and more skillful at reorienting because
I feel
because
you.
we lose it. We are going to lose it. That's part of the dance. That's part of the play of like hide and seek that we're doing with the divine and she's
Yeah.
doing with us. It's like, so I'm just trying to make that return as elegant, as skillful, and create
Yes.
the least amount of karma in the process of
Yes.
like just return, 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 return.
No, I feel you. Yeah, sometimes when I'm talking with people, I'll say like falling off the cart isn't the problem. It's about how efficiently you can get back on the cart.
Yeah.
And
And
so it's
like
like sometimes it takes a while, but it's like as long as you're trying to get back on the cart, that's the thing that matters.
totally. I'm reminded of Sai Baba, Shraddha and Suburi. He says that faith and
Mm-hmm.
patience, it's like faith and patience, faith and patience. Like we're approaching the infinite.
Mm-hmm.
The path is infinite. We need faith in the direction that we're going, in our teachers and the practices, and we need our patience, and our forbearance as we deal with ourselves and our shortcomings as we walk this infinite road. So it's just straddling our divinity and our humanity like every moment.
Yeah, literally every moment. Literally every moment. And laughing. I find like the laughing at I find when I'm in good spiritual alignment, I laugh when I'm doing something silly or like I'm digging a hole in the backyard, so to speak. I'm just like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. Like it's like being very compassionate with myself. Like, oh, you thought that's what was gonna make you feel better?
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. Just like having some humor about it.
Well, I think that's one of the great things about this particular tradition is the view of Leela, that this is God's play. This like it's like a drama, like a play or like a game,
It's a
you know?
dramedy.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I
It's a
always it's
dramedy.
like, yeah. sometimes my life feels like a parody of a tragedy, you know? It's like I just but you could laugh with God, and even in your suffering, it's like there are moments where, yeah, in real shit situations, my eyes have caught someone else, caught someone else's, and there's just the God in me is seeing the God in them, and even though the situation is absolutely horrific or painful, there's that moment of recognition that we're both in this together as the divine, and on that level, the both of us are having a good time.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
And so, yeah, you're going through tough times in moments in your life, but you still don't feel alone in that. You
Mhm.
feel like you're with the self, you're with the guru, you're with God, you're with the goddess, and that's a powerful place to be if you have to go through shit circumstances.
Totally. Totally. Something else that's coming up for me as I'm thinking about, like I've said maybe a couple of times so far this conversation, like if you're like out of alignment or not, but like then like the secret teaching too is like even when you're out of alignment, you're still in alignment because you need to be out of alignment in that moment and be with
Oh
all
yeah.
of that distraction in order for you to feel uncomfortable enough so that you do start coming back. And so there's never actually being out of alignment, but we call it that because it doesn't feel good. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like there's a kind of yoga that's called the yoga of hatred. I think it's called Samramba yoga. But it's like what Ravana, who is like the demon king in the Ramayana, he's the enemy of Lord Ram. But even as he's always like conspiring against Rama, in the moment of his being vanquished, he attains what he's thought of the most. He becomes one with Rama. You know what I mean? Like he, even his hatred was a yoga. It's a longer path, it's a less enjoyable path, but ultimately,
Oh, wow. Oh
it's
my
like,
God, yeah, because when you hate someone, they're always on your mind.
that's right. So he's always meditating on
Whoa.
Ram, even though it's his enemy. So the movement towards oneness is actually built in. It's just do we want to get on board with the process or not?
Wow, that just kind of chunked me down like 10 leagues below that saying like hate and love are almost like the same feeling.
Yeah,
But it's because it's like your mind is like fixated on something.
totally.
Wow.
And one of the also the brilliant things about this tradition is it's like transcending of dichotomizing beliefs. So it's like even though Ravana um is an enemy in the Ramayana, and by all accounts is actually kind of like he's a villain. He doesn't have very good qualities. He's a rapist. Um, he's a he's also known as a great devotee of Lord Shiva.
Yeah, he wrote like
And
a hymn to Shiva.
yes, Shiva Tandava Stotram, which is like
Exactly.
literally still played in Varanasi. People recite it, and most times there's a Shiva puja being done. And this hymn is still done all the time, and in that way, like the merit of Ravana as a great bhakta, as a great yogi,
Yeah.
is still there, even though there's all this other stuff, and he still attained the goal. He merges with Ram.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I used Ravana as an example in the YouTube talk that I posted about like how enlightenment doesn't equal pure morality or
Mm.
what we think of as morality. And so
Yeah.
that's actually that takes it even deeper where it's like in the talk I didn't quite say that he was enlightened at the moment of death. I kind of like left that out, but like to say that like he was liberated despite all of his bad actions, that's actually very transgressive.
Oh yeah, well that's such a tantric gloss.
That's very transgressive.
Yeah, and that life loves us too much to ever let us be separate.
Mm. Mm.
Like
Mm.
And Bhagavad Gita, it says like strange are the ways of karma. Sometimes we have to live through things just because it's what we have to live through for the evolution of our souls. And even great beings, they get, even great saints, siddhas, they get sick, they get diseases, they have accidents, they have scandals, all kinds of things like that. And we don't know why we have to live through whatever it is that we have to live through, but the keeping ourselves centered around what's important, that always brings grace.
Mm-hmm. 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 Whoa. Okay, so sometimes when we're talking, my mind goes like blissfully blank, which I'm really into. But I do want to remember that I did want to ask you about like your spiritual biography.
Yes.
And so I'm sure like this I kind of I know pieces of your story, but kind of like, how did you start on this path? Like what would you say was the starting point, and where would you go when I asked that question?
I think well, my my mom was from Mexico, and she was very Catholic and very devotional. I kind of grew up seeing images of Our Lady of Guadalupe around the house. I grew up going to mass.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like very, very, very interested in the lives of saints growing up. And sometime when I was quite young, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 or 8, I had an experience where I grew up right by a an elementary school, and my brother and his friends, we were all playing in the in the baseball field that was attached to the elementary school. And I wasn't very good at sports. I was like very obviously like a effeminate kid, a gay kid, like in Virginia. Like, so I was always stuck in the outfield, like everyone's playing baseball and I'm making daisy chains and just roaming around and dancing. And um I was, out in the outfield and just sort of twirling and dancing. And I had this moment where I looked up and I just saw the trees and the tree branches like moving a lot. And there wasn't any wind down where I was. And I had this like very strange experience of like seeing the effect of a wind that I couldn't see.
Hmm.
And then that sort of inverted where I felt the breeze, but the trees were still. And I had this like curious thought of like, this is what God is like. And in that moment in the outfield of Shelton Park Elementary School, I just experienced a really profound expansion of consciousness. Um, and just had all of these sort of illumined thoughts and emotions experienced very somatically, where I felt like we are the breath of God, and it was so profound and so humbling. And I felt the kind of what now I know as Spanda Shakti, the kind of divine pulsating quality that lives inside of all of life. And I just felt this overwhelming beauty and wonder. And then, not even a second after this had occurred, this very powerful, intrusive thought came in. And it was, because you're the only one who's feeling this right now. And because you can feel this, it means that you are very alone. And I experienced probably the deepest heartbreak I've ever known, even to this day, at that young age, where on the one hand, I had this incredible experience of God, and not even a breath after, um, this heartbreaking feeling of isolation, of just like being dropped from the height of that experience, by, the core contraction of personhood, egoic I. And it really did set me on a, a search. And, I was born in Virginia, obviously gay kid in a southern town. And I always felt very isolated, not just because of being young and effeminate and gay in this very conservative space, but also because of this spiritual experience I had had. And I didn't feel like I was in the right place where I could reveal that to anybody or that I could be understood by anybody.
So you kept it
Um,
to yourself?
yeah, and it really felt like a huge burden,
Mm.
and like a weight that I had seen something that was big that I couldn't share with anybody, that was gonna be misinterpreted or that would not be understood or would make me feel weird, and all I wanted was just to belong and fit in, and
Mm.
you know
Mm.
and that I was really bullied in school and into my teenage years. That it got me very, very depressed. At one point, even I tried to take my own life as a teenager, and after that, a friend's mom saw that I was suffering, and even though I went to a Catholic school, this girl's mom, she was like a real hippie and very new agey, and she gave me uh, a this little kit that came from like Barnes and Noble that was called the prayer bead box, and it had a mala, a sandalwood mala inside of it, and the book talked about the tradition of prayer beads throughout every culture, and it gave simple practices, and I that's where I encountered the mantra Om Namah Shivaya,
From this
and
box from Barnes and Noble?
yeah, and Om Namah Shivaya, I originally understood its meaning to be, I can't remember if it's from that book in particular or after doing a bit of further research. I understood it to mean salutations to that which I'm capable of becoming,
Oh.
which um hit me perfectly for where I was at in my journey of life.
Jealous.
I didn't want to be in Virginia. I felt so othered and like an outsider. And I just wanted to get out of here, like I wanted to get out of there. So I just started to do intense japa as like a 12 or 13-year-old. And
Whoa,
just Om Namah
that's
Shivaya, Om Namah
interesting
Shivaya.
karma.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And
keep going.
I did lots and lots of japa of Om Namah Shivaya. And during the time when I used to uh and I would wear the mala all the time. It was a sandalwood mala, and when I'd be stressed or anxious, like my body temperature would increase and I would smell the sandalwood and it would calm me and it would always reorient me back to the mantra. And so I started to basically have this experience of like akhanda sadhana, unbroken sadhana, repeating Om Namah Shivaya all day, every day. But the last thing I thought before I fell asleep, the first thought I thought when I woke up. Um, and also I started to have dreams of sitting in meditation with an Indian man and chanting his mantra with him. And I felt a lot of love and compassion and understanding from this man.
Wait, so can I clarify something?
Yeah.
So, like, aside from like this booklet and the mala that you got and some of your own research, like, you didn't really have a lot of what's the word that I'm looking for? Like exposure to like Indian religion or yoga. Like, this was just kind of coming of its own accord.
Yeah.
Aha.
Yeah, no exposure. And I was in the pre-professional program for a ballet company growing up, and I was dancing, and at some point we started to be taught hatha yoga, physical postural yoga, to help our dancing, because the kind of modern technique that we were being taught, it's known for ravaging the body, and they were starting to have a sense of like, oh, we should like help these people learn to take care of themselves long term.
Totally.
So um I loved the way I felt doing hatha yoga, and I found that it was really good for my mental state and my anxiety and the negative thoughts I had from being bullied and all that stuff. And so I sought out a yoga studio and yoga teacher. And this is around the time I was like probably 14, 15. And then I enrolled in her teacher training program. Her name is Asha Rap, and she was a devotee of Swami Satchidananda
Mm,
of Yogaville fame.
mm, mm.
And I did the teacher training when I was 15. And she presented the whole system of yoga, which put all of the pieces of the hatha yoga, the meditation, the mantra, etc., all of that. She presented the whole system of yoga, and I was like, it was a real homecoming moment to
Mm,
be like, oh wow, like I've been chanting this mantra. It comes from the yogic tradition.
mm,
And so I started to really, and study philosophy and the scriptures and chant. And we got taken up to the ashram, and
mm.
it was just a very powerful experience. And um, yeah, and years later, after spending some time in the ashram in Virginia, the Satchidananda tradition, I moved to New York for school, to
Like
study
college?
dance. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
to study dance. And my that same teacher, Asha Rap, she was like, "You need satsang." And in the ashram of Swami Satchidananda, I had picked up the practice of swadhyaya, the
Mm,
recitation of long stotrams. At that time, I was chanting the Hanuman Chalisa.
mm, mm.
And my teacher, knowing how I was, she said, "Oh, if you like doing Hanuman Chalisa, you should go sing the Guru Gita. You'll like it. It's even longer."
It's even
And
longer.
so,
It's
and I
really
was like, "Yeah, yeah." So I took the ashram of Siddha Yoga, happened to be a couple of blocks away from my dorm room. And when I walked into the meditation hall, um, to sing the Guru Gita on that first Sunday morning, there's, a pair of the Guru's sandals, silver Guru Padukas at the front of the room, a chair which had the image of the female guru who runs that tradition, Swami Chidvilasananda. And above there was a photo of Baba Muktananda, who I recognized from my dreams as a kid chanting Om Namah Shivaya, exactly as I had seen him in the dream. And above
wait.
him
Oh,
was a
sorry.
banner that said Om Namah Shivaya. And so all of my hair stands on end. I start to sob, um, because a person I had thought just existed in a dream was now staring me in the face, this
Mm,
picture, like,
mm,
and so I was like, what is happening? So I sang the Guru Gita. I loved it. Um, and then, Baba Muktananda had taken Mahasamadhi, or he had left his physical body long before I ever got involved into the yoga. And so I just made it my business to study and read everything he ever put out. And, Baba Muktananda would begin all of his talks by saying, "With great respect and great love, I welcome you with all my heart."
mm,
And this, he always emphasized, was the real spiritual life. That's what it really meant to be a true human being, he would say, to learn to welcome ourselves and other people and the experiences of our life with respect and love.
mm,
And, that hit my gay trauma in all the right ways. You know what I mean? Like, so I felt so healed by the glance of Baba Muktananda,
mm.
you know, and his words, they spoke to me in a very deep way. And they also, the way that he taught Kashmir Shaivism, it course corrected something that was happening in my sadhana, because in the Satchidananda tradition, there was a big emphasis on Yoga Sutra and Bhagavad Gita,
Mm.
and it was very yogic and very kind of, it could be very austere or kind of neti, meaning not this in its approach. It was a path of negation, of like always pulling back and meditating, etc. Um, and
Mm.
this and that had led to a lot of powerful thinking about myself and pathways to the self in that way were very powerful. Um, but I was having big experiences as kind of a disembodied consciousness blob from practicing in a certain way with a certain understanding about life and what it meant to experience the self,
Mm.
and encountering the non-dual gloss of Shaivism as Baba had presented it meant that I could see and experience God in this body, with this mind, with this energy in my life. And it started to take that feeling of the expanded self, which somehow felt like behind me or above me, and
Mm.
really pour it into my body,
Mm.
which was way more useful living in New York City.
Oh my God, that's so real. Oh, that's so real. So, like before in the Satchidananda approach, it was the neti neti, not this sort of energy, which maybe was easier, like in a more rural ashram setting. But when you were living in New York City, like that almost felt like dissonant, or like something isn't
Yeah,
fully filled in, or.
totally. And I think it's also what that my interpretation of what was presented there is my own, and that's what
That's
I
real.
got from it. Um, but that was very useful at the time because my challenge was way greater than my skill level.
Mm.
So to be a neti neti yogi, a negating yogi, to pull back from my experience so I could make contact with the self, it gave me that philosophy of like the separation of Purusha and Prakriti, the
Mm.
seer and kind of nature, or the self and nature, consciousness and matter, was very useful because it meant I could say, I'm not my pain. I'm not my trauma. I'm not my story. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my emotions. And it gave me the breathing room to examine all of those and take the charge out of them.
Mm.
The work of Shaivism, then, as an iti path, a path of affirmation, is to feel that even those worst moments were the play of the Shakti.
Mm.
That they are a form of Shiva, or they're a form of Shakti, and they're part of God's infinite creative capacity. They're part of the Leela,
Mm.
and um, they are a part of the divine, but they're not the whole story.
Mm.
And there's this grand, mysterious, marvelous thing that's going on, and you're a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to a deeper sense of belonging.
Mm. Hmm. Did you feel like this helped to resolve some your Natarajness?
Ooh, good question. I mean, it did in some ways and it didn't in others. I think
Yeah.
my whole I think there are certain issues that we have in our spiritual life that we just run into again and again and again and again. And for me, it's like I think
Oh,
I'm always going to be an outlier. I'm always going to be a weirdo. I'm never going to quite fit in
yes.
places, even in institutions like ashrams or lineages.
Hmm.
Um I'm kind of always been this kind of one foot in one camp and one foot in the other, or like I just don't fit the mold. And
Mm.
in some ways that's my gift. It's extraordinary. And in other ways it could put me in my pain and my story and my limited individuality.
Mm.
But when leveraged the right way, it actually gives me this great perspective and approach
Mm.
and a ability to really see everything as sacred. Um,
Mm.
but if I hold it the wrong way, it's a pathway to hell almost instantly.
Totally. The word that's coming up in my head a lot right now is like resistance. And I think that like we were talking about this before we hit record of the neti neti, not this, and the itty itty, this sort of dichotomy
Mm,
in those differences. And we were talking about how the not this path is really valuable work and can give us great value, immense value, liberatory value. But maybe sometimes as a byproduct of that way, we can have some resistance that builds because we think the thisness of what we are should not be, or on some
Mm.
level. And so I was kind of wondering if, like, when you started becoming introduced to Kashmir Shaivism, like, you felt less resistance around just like the thisness of you. I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, part of it was starting to read Pratyabhigya Hridayam,
Uh-huh.
which is this tantric scripture about recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the recognition of one's isness, to remember what's always been true, and the method of doing that is like everything God does, you do,
Mm-hmm.
and the text, it says that consciousness, out of its supreme power, she manifests the world on her own screen or out of her own being, and she goes through a process of contraction to become the individual. That means that that great power that's made the whole universe has gone through a very specific process of limitation to become you the way you are now, because she wants to have the experience that only you can provide her, because you're this unique thing, and she wants to live out every possible uh experience, feel every possible feeling, think every possible thought, and there's something that only you can offer her
Mm-hmm.
through your unique like kind of fingerprint quality of your personality. And so um if she had to go through all of that to become me, that's not arbitrary and it's not a mistake.
Totally.
And so I I want to play my part well.
Mm.
Like I want to live fully.
Mm.
And that means accepting my unique quirks and
Yes.
tensions and talents and leveraging
Yes.
all of my being onto this path.
Yes.
And so it's
Yes.
not a
Leveraging. That's a good
denying,
word.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
not denying my personhood, but using my
Mm.
my
Your unique attributes.
yes, the good, the bad, the ugly, the skillful, the unskillful on the path.
Mm.
And I'm super interested in doing that. And like nobody's gonna live out spirituality the way I am.
Mm.
And that's great. It leaves a lot of room for self-compassion, a lot of way
Oh,
for
good.
innovation, for inspiration. And this is the great, for me as a bhakta, I always say this is the greatest love story of my life. I'm the leading lady of this love story. No one's going to take that away from me. And I don't have to try and be anything else. It's my own unique story.
Mm.
And it's my unique love with life, with God, with
Mm.
Guru, with self.
Nectar. Every word coming out of your mouth. That's such good nectar. I feel like that's going to be so healing for so many people to hear, because this might just be part of the spiritual path, but quite often we get on the path because we think we need to be different. And maybe there's a little bit of wisdom in that. Maybe there's a little bit of wisdom in that. But then the real realization is actually just fully embracing the beingness and fullness of who you are.
Yeah. I mean, and these practices and philosophies, Baba Muktananda said, sadhana will emaciate you at least once. And so this process, it is self-destructive in a way. It's in fact totally self-destructive. You'll lose everything in the process of doing this work. All of your opinions, all of your fixed ideas, all of your attachments and aversions, they will be stripped away from you, sometimes in very painful ways. But over time, as the car of your personality is being disassembled and repaired, it will be reassembled. And
Oh,
you get everything back, but you hold it differently. You,
mm.
you don't consider yourself to just be your parts anymore. I don't know how to describe it, but like
I have an analogy.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'm reading a sci-fi book right now called Mickey 17. Okay,
Yeah.
I read a lot of fantasy and fiction for fun for my brain. And the story is basically about this guy who elects to be killed repeatedly for the government. Okay. And so he like literally downloads his consciousness somewhere, and then whenever he needs to like die for the cause of something, he's reborn. But then he technically has a new body, but he's still the same
Right.
consciousness. Okay. I'm trying to paint you a picture.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
in the story, there's this philosophy. I can't remember the name of it, but it's almost kind of like a philosophy mind game. And it's about a ship that travels around the world. And it takes like 20 years or something for the ship to come all the way around the world. But in the process of going on that journey, it needed to be constantly repaired, and like new boards, new engine, new flag, all of these sorts of things. And so the philosophical quandary is, when the ship comes back to port, is it still the same ship if it has completely new parts but is still the same shape? Or is it a different ship? And I feel like that's coming up for me right now when I'm hearing you speak, because the self-destructive aspect of the yoga path is almost like you're still going to be you, but every part of you has been disassembled and reassembled into something more.
That's
Does
right.
that check out?
Yeah, totally. You've been refined, you've been purified, you've been tweaked in some way. Um, yeah, the snake, it'll shed its skin, but it's
Mm.
still the same snake.
Exactly.
It's just, yeah.
Exactly.
And that's so true. There are parts of the spiritual process where you'll lose interest in things that you once
That's
loved,
right.
but and then all of a sudden, like maybe even years later, they come back, but you engage with it in a different way,
Yes.
or you take that talent or that skill or that love, and it gets expressed
Yeah.
in new ways.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's so mysterious.
Yeah, it is mysterious. Yeah, I think I've heard similar things like that about like the purification of buddhi, like the intellect, which is like what
Mm.
we hold on to or what we let go of. And as buddhi is purified, we like forget the names of things sometimes, because the names of those things actually don't matter anymore. It's like maybe you don't remember if you grew up playing video games and you loved video games, but then when you get older, it's like you almost can't even remember the names of those things anymore. Does
Yeah,
that make sense? It's like
yeah, totally.
because it's not information that the mind needs to keep going on the path. I don't know.
Yeah, or even looking back at past things that used to feel like they had huge emotional charge or were character defining moments.
Yeah,
Like there are certain aspects of my story where I retell them now and I'm like, it almost doesn't even feel like it was me.
I get that.
Or like, I'm like, wow, I lived that really intense, crazy thing. And I've packed a lot in. You know what I mean? Like I've had a
Totally.
really cathartic experience of life. But I retell parts of my story and I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
that used to have such a huge charge, or that used to
Mm.
create some sort of feeling shift inside of me,
Mm.
or it used to feel like it was so defining, and now it
Mm.
just
Mm. It might make you
doesn't
feel a little
feel that
crazy
way.
if you don't know any better.
Yeah, but I'm like, oh, maybe actually meant you've digested that experience fully, or
Totally.
you've taken the nectar from it rather and just
Totally.
set aside the poison.
Totally. Yeah, I remember maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, I had this experience where, oh, it was my first real powerful experience with mantra. And it was really working my intellect, and it was really working my perception of reality. And I was going through the hardest time I've ever experienced in my entire life so far, God willing. And I remember thinking I felt okay. I felt pretty good, but I was going through something that everybody else pitied me for. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, am I a sociopath? Or is this what yoga is? Like
Yeah.
I was, you know what I mean? Because it's like we almost we live in a reality where we're not shown any examples of that complexity of experience where you can be getting drugged through the shit and be okay at the same time. That sentence doesn't compute. Do you see what I mean?
The
We live in
yogic
this like
path.
duality.
Yeah, I think for me, the yogic path, or this idea of being like a modern mystic or contemplative or monastic, it's always about integrating complexity,
Mm,
and being with
mm,
the mess. I once was listening to a talk by the great practitioner and scholar Douglas Brooks, and he said being a Shakta is about it's about asking the question, what do we do with life's extra broken and missing pieces?
Oh.
And there's a part of our mind that wants certainty, and we want the puzzle to fit back together in this neat
Oh
and
wow.
clean way. But the nature of the Shakti, the energy of this life, is she's always generating, she's always creating. And so you think it's going to be a beautiful mountainscape that you're putting the puzzle back together,
Mm.
but all of a sudden there's like, these are puzzle pieces for a dog, that are also in there, or these pieces don't fit together. And then there's like a rubber ball and some jacks that are here, and some
Mm.
like loose change also on the table.
Mm.
And it's actually
Oh,
there's
it's
never
okay
a
that they
moment
don't
where
fit.
that's right. But let's just marvel at like that there's always new stuff. Like
Totally. 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 It's okay that they don't fit.
it's so okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels really good. I like that.
Yeah, you could take all the pressure off yourself. You don't have to figure it out. You
Mhm.
just have to be with the mystery. It's
Totally.
stay open.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I really understand what you're saying, and I really have found a lot of healing in that as well because even just for anyone who's listening who might relate with what I'm saying, like I experienced so much confusion throughout my childhood that there's entire black boxes of my childhood that I have no memory of. And from a Western developmental point of view, that can be very distressing because we're taught you need to figure out what happened. And then once you figure out what happened, you'll be okay. And in my experience, that is never actually true. But it can be really healing to engage with philosophy that tells you like it's okay if you have missing pieces. It's okay if you don't know why you are right now. The thing that you're going to work with is how you are right now. You don't need to know why you feel this way necessarily. You just need to be as close as possible to what's happening right now.
And these are just lessons in awakening and surrender.
Mm,
The broken, extra, and missing pieces. They're trying to wake you up. They're trying to teach you to let go.
mm,
In any moment, life wants you to cultivate one thing and let go of another.
mm,
It's the sort of abhyasa and vairagya, or practice and the non-attachment or renunciation of it all. That like we're being asked to cultivate certain things, to build certain virtues, skills, strengths, and then on the other hand, um, yeah, let go.
mm, mm. Well, Nataraj, wait a minute. We have about 10 more minutes until we need to start winding down, but we kind of left off as far as your spiritual biography with like you being introduced to Siddha Yoga,
Yeah.
Baba Muktananda's teachings, and I'm sure like a bunch of shit has happened since then.
Oh, so much. Yeah.
And maybe you have like a story or two you feel inspired to share, or maybe stuff that's more relevant to kind of where you are now or how you got to where you are now.
Yes. I Yeah, I guess I'll speak a bit about I wasn't always a lover of the goddess, finding the path of
Mm,
Shaivism. It's very Shiva focused actually. And it wasn't till at some point my mom, she got diagnosed with cancer, and I I had a weird like sort of experience where when she got diagnosed with cancer, I had this strange foreboding the feeling that it would definitely lead to her death.
mm,
And I decided to take up Purusharana, or like an Anushthan, a practice of doing Mahamrityunjaya mantra.
mm.
And the classical method for Purusharana, one of the aspects of it is that you do 100,000 repetitions per syllable of the mantra.
Oh my God. Wait, per
So that
syllable?
Yeah, so that's the
That's
way
a
you
longer
awaken.
mantra.
Yeah, so it's like 2.4 or 2.5 million mantras.
My God.
So And you have certain things that you abstain from and certain things you observe while doing this. You do a certain number of the mantras into sacred fire, into water, into food donation, etc. And doing that mantra, a couple of things happened, you know. Um, one, she when she was going through chemo, uh, they said, you know, you can bring music to listen to, and so I started to make my mom mix CDs of music to listen to while she's going through chemo. And at some point, I got my first uh, Mac computer, which had GarageBand, and friends and I, you know, we would record a song to put at the end of every mix. I was already playing hard, you know, so we'd get together and we would sing, you know, like "Take Me Home, Country Roads" by John Denver, or I was playing the banjo a lot at the time, or we'd do like "Wagon Wheel," and then we started to also sing kirtans, to sing Sanskrit mantras, and one of them was a chant to the Divine Mother, and she really loved that. And I remember singing that to her, even when I go visit her in the hospital, singing it. I even brought like a tiny pair of kartals, like the handbells, and I would sing it to her while she was in the hospital. And it honors the goddess. It says Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayami, that the mother is the true teacher, and she's the Antarayami. She's the knower of the innermost space. She's the knower of all hearts. And as I was doing this Puruscharana of the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, I really felt the mantra come alive. And I felt the power of this mantra. And I knew that if I continued to do this mantra in the same way, it could keep her alive. But I had a sense that it would not be, it wouldn't be the right kind of life, you know? And because I was seeing that her condition was really deteriorating. And I felt like it's actually, you need to change the sankalpa of this, and you need to chant to help her pass. You need to chant to help her have a peaceful transition. And I I wasn't with her when she took her last breaths, but I was teaching a yoga class, strangely enough, and then I came out from teaching a yoga class, and I had a voicemail from my dad, and I could hear the ambulance sirens in the background, and he said, "It's happening, call me." And I called. I wasn't able to get a hold of him. I called my brother. My brother said, he held up the phone to her ear, and I was able to chant the Mahamrityunjaya mantra to her as she took her last breaths. And I felt like that was grace. You know, I felt like that was pure grace. And years and that sorrow of losing my mother, who I love very dearly, you know, it was so painful and presented a unique challenge for me, because this person who I loved and adored and encouraged me and nourished me, I couldn't reach out to anymore. And that meant I had to try and seek the mother in a universal way. Seek the mother in nature, seek the mother in the kindness of others, in the love of friendship, and in music and art and dance.
Oh, you're bringing tears to my eyes.
And it was a nourishment for growth spiritually, and also a deep pain. And when I met my teachers in my guru who I took initiation from, Swami Shankarananda and Devi Ma Saraswati, when I met them in India, you know, I'd been corresponding with them for a long time. Swamiji and Devi Ma are both direct disciples of Baba Muktananda. I At some point they knew that I had led kirtan, and they said, you know, one of the assistants was organizing the chanting for the programs, and said, "Nataraj, we know you do kirtan. Will you sing something in the program?" And I said, "Okay." And I pitched her a couple of ideas, and sure enough, she picked Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharan, Guru Antarayami. And I I sang this chant for them, and they happened to really like it. And there's a very powerful and mysterious temple uh in Vajeshwari, in Ganeshpuri, in the land where this tradition comes from.
Mm.
And Swamiji had me lead this chant again inside of this very powerful temple of Vajeshwari. Um, and the experience of being able to sing this chant that I had sung to my mother in this ancient goddess temple, of having the guru deliver me to the goddess,
Mm.
and to sing this song that had been loaded with such complexity, but now to give it over fully to God
Mm.
in this ancient temple with after receiving this profound initiation and all these things. It was such a full circle moment and testament to the path and the teacher's ability to alchemize poison into nectar.
Mm.
And 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 that even the parts of us that, yeah, do feel complicated or full of pain, um they've made seekers and finders out of us,
Mm.
you know, and in that way they're worthy to be offered to God. It was so deep and so mysterious, and it's a moment that I think about so often in my own interiority, that like how mysterious life is, that even painful moments can become such rich offerings.
Mm.
Mm.
Mm. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that. That made me very emotional in a good way. It opened my
Yeah, I was, it's, yeah, we're on a path that's so abundant, you know, we're in a tradition that's filled with so much grace.
Mm. Totally. Totally. Yeah, I was really struck by what you shared about when your mother left her body and you lost this avenue of connection or this person to turn to, and how under unfortunate circumstances it kind of, you could say, kind of forced you to find the mother in other ways.
That's right.
And I have felt in myself, like, this is all speculation, I always speculatively imagine what my samskaras are or my soul habits are, and the things that have maybe snagged me up over lifetimes.
Mm.
And for me, I've had a very different experience with my mother, where we had a very strained relationship. I hated her from the age of 10. So, it's like I really did not vibe with her. And I sometimes feel like throughout lifetimes, like maybe I've tried to resolve things with the human mother as if that will make me feel better,
Mm.
but the real resolution is in the divine mother. And that's almost kind of like the karmas I've been given have pushed me to like realize, like, oh, like if I fix my shit with mom, and or if I'm perfect for her, or if I do all this stuff, that our relationship is good, then I will feel okay. I think that I've been trying to do that for like thousands of years.
Oh yeah, well,
And then
this,
and then my path is to see the mother in everything, and to get that support and that validation and proof of the worthiness of my existence just from the mere fact of my awareness.
yeah, I mean, being with paradox, integrating complexity, it's so present in the rupas, the forms of the Divine Mother. When we see images like Kali or Tara, Bhairavi, Chinnamasta, Dhamavati, and all these ferocious forms of the goddess, and yet we're instructed to approach them as mother.
Mm,
You know, like that's
mm,
mom with like a bloody sword, or
mm,
in a cremation ground,
mm,
or in a, and
mm.
yeah, how we approach that dictates what we get out of it. You know,
Yes.
it's like what we bring in our inner world to that situation, and how we cultivate that relationship is the most powerful thing, not the ordinary appearance
Mm,
of something. It's not about what they did or how it looks, but it's about our inner world process, because you're
mm,
Shiva, you know, you're God, and
mm,
and this, I think there's so much to gain from the worship of the mother because of
Mm,
this intense and wrathful iconography
mm,
and the demand on us that we bring our love to it. And the worship of the Divine Mother, it comes from shmashan practice, cremation ground practice. And there is a huge tradition in the Tantra of like, do your sadhana in a frightful place.
mm,
Um, and to be with our life and all of its messiness is the frightful place. And also, all the deities live in the body, and the Kali has depicted with having her foot on Lord Shiva's heart, and the place where shmashan, the cremation ground, is in the body, it's in the heart.
mm,
And so there's a weird thing. It's like, in what ways are the heart and a cremation ground similar?
mm,
Well, it's like cremation fire burns everything down to oneness, ash, and our love also is a movement towards oneness.
mm,
So even the ferocious and the virtuous, or the loving and the painful, are still somehow the same,
mm,
and that's like, there's some weird paradox
mm,
inside of us that's in the heart space, it's in the inner world, and we can do our sadhana there, and that's where we'll experience the Lord or the goddess.
mm,
um
mm.
it's an eternal mystery.
Wow. I feel like I'm just getting like pounded with bricks of Shakti right now. It's like I'm like overwhelmed in a good way. Oh my God. I'm gonna listen to this like 5 times probably.
I
Just to
hope
get your
people listen to
nectar.
this,
Just to get
and
your
they and they,
nectar.
I hope people listen to this and they're like, are they going to be like, did anything he say make any sense?
Oh, every word you say, I'm just like, wow. It's like, what's the word I'm looking for? I almost have this feeling like, attention. Like it just like picks me up. Like I'm in the military, but like in a good way. It's wakeful. That's the word I'm looking for. It's wakeful, but maybe I understand your language or something, but I find this intense wakefulness to what you're sharing. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
It's a good
it's
reminder.
it's it's the beauty of a kula conversation, that we're in this
Yeah.
same family and we can
Uh-huh.
reveal our hearts to each other, where there is a commonality
Mm-hmm.
and a shared understanding, and it makes us feel seen and heard and not alone in our suffering, or special in our suffering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, we've officially been on this Zoom meeting for 2 hours. The recording isn't quite that long. I'm just wondering kind of how you're feeling. Do you feel like you're cooked? Do you want to talk a little bit longer? Do you want to fade out?
Yes, I think let's fade out. And then
Yeah.
if we ever want to come back and have the conversation we're actually planning to have, we should do that too.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's actually what my gut was telling me too.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
this is what we've talked about, has such a particular tone and flavor and energy.
Yeah, totally.
And the other topics, I think it would just be a huge
I know. Well, so maybe we can
tone shift.
keep people on the edge of
Yeah,
their seat for the next time.
that's right. Yeah, I think this is the beginning of a lot of beautiful conversations that we'll have together.
I agree. I agree. Oh my God, you gave me such a good reminder to return to the recognition sutras during this
Yeah.
conversation. So I'm really glad that we talked. I really want to return to that again. I recently read it because I told you that I had never read the recognition sutras like a few 6, 7, 8 months ago or something. And and I was like, I'm so surprised that the whole thing is about grace. And you were like, yeah. I was like, wait a minute. And then I asked my guru, and he was like, oh, yeah, I love that text. And I was like, oh, that's why everything in the recognition sutras sounds just like you.
Yeah.
Like, I had just never read it.
And how comforting to know everything God does, you do, and everything you do, God does. Like the 5 acts, the 5 acts of Shiva, Nataraja, amazing.
Mm, yeah. Well, okay, so let's fade out. Let's fade out. I'm just wondering, based off of this conversation today, like, when you were talking about your story or your experiences or just speaking about anything today, do you feel like you learned anything new about yourself or like a new download came in as you were speaking?
That I I the path can be filled with a lot of nuances and a lot of jargon and a lot of esotericism.
Mm,
But what I feel of a newfound clarity, and I hope that people
mm,
approach their sadhana and spiritual process in such a way where they just keep making the return.
mm,
The remembrance is so important,
mhm,
and
mhm,
and that in each moment we yeah, I want people to connect with the tools and practices and perspectives that just help them remember.
mhm,
And that's actually what's made the most difference in my own life is this feeling of recognition and remembrance and the return to love.
mm,
That's what it's really all about. Everything else is just sort of window dresser.
mm. Yeah, I love that message of keep making the return. Yeah, that's another healing message too, because I've worked with a lot of people who don't even realize how attached or bought into the idea of perfection they are. Like the things that they need to be doing are perfect, or they need to be the perfect yogi, or they need to be the perfect student, or whatever. And my point of view as a very messy yogi myself is I'm always like, the only thing I'm perfect about is my commitment to the process. Just the commitment to
True.
the return. That is the only thing I'm perfect about, if anything.
That's
Just
right.
keep coming back. And you might be messy, you might be covered in goo, you might be tired, you might be pissed off, but just be perfect in your commitment to the return. That's all you have to do.
That's right.
Thank
I want to
you.
I want to come back to the path no matter what. Even if the wheels are falling off the vehicle, I will push that thing back on.
Literally. Literally. Yeah, wow. Beautiful. Well, Nataraj, you're teaching this class about the Devi right now, but like how if somebody was super stoked about you listening to this, like how would you want them to contact you or
Oh, great.
get
I
in
have a
touch?
website. It's my name, natarajchaitanya.com. I have a Patreon where I share kind of archival talks or any satsang or class I give. Eventually it goes up on there. There's also like harmonium tutorials, hatha yoga classes, guided meditations, yoga nidras.
Mm,
A donation of any amount gives you access to everything. There's no tiered system. And I have a lot of resources that are on the website too. There's a link to my kirtan album, my I'm on Insight Timer and all kinds of things. So if you want to connect, there's also my contact details if you want to write me.
nice.
So yeah,
Beautiful. Is there anything that you want to like shamelessly plug? Like, is there anything else that you're teaching these days, or is it just the Devi course?
this year I got the very strong. I have a retreat to India coming up
Oh,
in
nice.
October, and it depending on when this comes out, I have also a sadhana retreat coming up in March in
Nice.
Bali.
Nice.
So I have two retreats coming up this year. October is India, Rishikesh, and March is Bali and Tejakula in the North Mountains. So yeah, there's the opportunities to go on retreat with me, to chant and meditate and do hatha yoga and be in community, be in satsang together.
Yay! I'll be there someday.
Yeah.
That'd be so cool. Well, yeah, it's been so great to have you on. And then I think we just left off with a little teaser for having you back and we can talk about other stuff and that would be so fun. I
Yeah.
would love to do that.
Yeah, me too. So nice
Yay.
to be with you, Hanna.
Yes. Okay. We're gonna close out now. Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. The information for the guest that I had on is down in the description. And if you loved this episode or have loved any episodes of Grace Pilled, could you share with a friend? That is the freest way to support me in this work. If you really love what I'm doing, just share it with a friend. That is the most phenomenal thing you could do for me. The second most phenomenal thing you could do for me is join our course, Run Towards the Hard Shit. That's starting June 4th. There's still time to sign up. We're going to go through 4 stages of understanding conflict over the course of 4 sessions. Understanding yourself, your role, your conflict history, understanding the person you are in conflict with, understanding what happens in the actual conversation of the conflict, and then finally, what happens afterwards? How do we tend to a conflict after our discussion is over? Is it just a one discussion situation? And when is it not worth it to resolve conflict with people? So if you want to get better at doing conflict with people, which to me is the cutting edge of human evolution, you can join us for class. We start June 4th. And then other than that, you can catch me on my website, hannawilliams.com. You can check out my Patreon, which is my giant library of talks and courses that I've given over the years. And I guess if you're not interested in any of that, I'll see you next time.